Yesterday we have gone through some points of meditation. I was explaining certain points with regard to the practice, in particular for pacifying, calming our mind through the practice of anapanasati. So quite a detailed explanation given about this particular practice. And then in addition to that, on the basis of the teaching of the precious master, also gave some explanations with regards to practices, with regards to methods of meditation that can be added on the practice of anapanasati. So therefore we have touched some points with regards to combining the practice of meditation with the breathing, also with the mental recitation of the 3 root syllables of the mantra, so-called Vajra recitation. And also we have touched the points of the meditation of Tong Len, that is taking and giving, or giving and taking, as it is taught in the Bodhicitta training of the mind. So those are all methods of practicing meditation, that means familiarizing our mind on the basis of our breathing. So these are, first of all, they are a method of developing mindfulness, that is awareness of our mind of the object. Very often our mind, because it's so much agitated and it's totally out of control, so therefore although we apply our mind, or our mind thinks of 100 different things, but it's never so really through these to gain a really full understanding, full realization. Very difficult, because it is just our mind is touching just a little bit object and nothing is really absorbed, just touching hundreds of different things, always like that. We say it is just like goat eating from the tips of the leaves. It's not like the sheep eating the grass on the meadow very thoroughly. The sheep eat the grass very thoroughly, and that's why some people around here also, they bring sheep in their garden as a lawnmower, because they do the work very, very thoroughly. But the goats are different. Goats, take them out for gazing. The goat, they always climb on some rocks and things, and they try to pick up from a little bit the tips of all the plants and things, but they never eat so from the ground so thoroughly like the sheep. So therefore, being some, by mistaking goat and sheep, and we bring some goat to work in the garden, it will be totally catastrophic. Then the garden will be ruined. And because the goat is a very of the nature of fire element, these animals, we all have different elements. It's a fire element, so therefore, when the goats eat something, then usually it does not grow, because their teeth have this particular thing, so therefore then they don't grow. And the sheep is different, they eat very, very thoroughly, just like this machine that look a little bit similar, but still they are fundamentally different. Even their way of fighting is totally different. Goats must first get up very high, and then they beat each other. The sheep goes few steps back, and then very strong. They go back and then bang. So it's totally different. Goats looks very impressive, but it's nothing so very dangerous. They get up very high up and then crack. Yeah, but it's never so strong as the sheep. There's one animal in Canada, in this country, which is called musk ox. Musk ox. It is not bison. It's totally different. They all look a little bit similar. And this musk ox looks very similar to yak. So I thought first maybe they are kind of yak. because the size and lot of hair, and there is one animal closest from looking to the yak. But then when observing their behavior, they are not at all similar to the yak. They are totally different. They are kind of big sheep. Because when we see them only when they are fighting. They are fighting exactly like sheep. They go backward they go. And these are big sheep, so they go quite far backward. And then they again turn back, and then with all the force, and then bang! They're terrible, really. And it's also told that sometimes they can break their whole head in that process. And then they again go backward far, and like those duels, people who used to shoot each other, like that, they go backward for quite far, and then they again turn around, and then with all the force they gallop and then bang. So they are a big sheep. They are totally different from yaks. Yaks' way of fighting, similar to the cows and the bulls. That's, even though they look very similar with long hair and size, big and so on, but it's a different kind of. So it is a big, grown up sheep, a musk ox. We have here in the valleys very special cows. Maybe many people still don't know. They are really cows. They are great fighters. They are specially raised not for milk but for fighting. Usually the fighting is always the job of toro, the bulls. Here it is not the bulls, it's the cows. They are incredibly strong cows, and they fight also with all their might, great fighters, just like those huge yaks and wild yaks also. Yaks are always male, there's never any cow yak. If we say milking yao, that sounds very weird. Or I drink milk of yak, then becomes very strange. Because yak is never, it's always male, not female. Female is called dri, not yak. This is a very important lesson. Make any mistake. Milk of dri is really maybe the most nourishing and most the richest milk. That is quite well proved scientifically also. It's very rich. Anyway, they are only D, never yak. But so the yaks are always male, and these are great fighters also. And wild yak is particularly big and fighters. So similar to that, these Valisar cows also always black. They are always black, not any other color, like the yak. So, and when they are also great fighter, and they give great prize and so on. This is a little bit of the Swiss lesson. And to see if one puts one yak with Valisar cow, then maybe they let them fight and then see who wins. Probably they don't fight, maybe they marry. Well, this is also an important point for the contemplative meditation. So therefore, the whole mind is like, not like the sheep, but like the goat, that we generally touch to 100 different points and think about so many different things, but without really digesting anything, without really understanding fully. And so therefore, because we have no mindfulnesses, we are only touching various subjects, but we are not practicing mindfulness. Mindfulness is nothing else than remembrance, that keeping our awareness, maintaining that awareness. It is a kind of remembrance. When we talk about the remembrance, smriti, which is a Sanskrit word, that means remembering or mindfulness, which can be three types. So remembering, mindfulness of the things of the past. That's what we call recollection, or remembering things what happened in the past. Try to recall it. That is one kind of mindfulness. And then also we have the remembrance of the future, one may not call it remembrance in English because it is not recollection, because it has not yet happened. We also should be aware of many things, what happens in the future, what I need to do tomorrow. Should not forget what I have to do tomorrow. And this is very important. We even have to take into consideration what will happen to me even in the future existence. And all these has to be taken into account. So this is also kind of mindfulness of the future. Very, very important. And then mindfulness of the present. So mindfulness of the present is the remembrance of the object at the present, at this moment, not losing the object of one's mind, whether one is studying, whether one is concentrated on some particular work, or one is focused one's mind upon one particular object of meditation, whatever that be, may it be form of the Buddha, may it be nature of one's mind, or may it be the suffering of the beings, or may it be the emptiness or whatever. So we focus our mind on this and not keep it, maintain this awareness, without again thinking about something else. So without losing it, then it's called mindfulness. So when we are breathing in Anapanasati, we are practicing mindfulness of the breathing. So we are not thinking anything about anything of the past, future or whatever. We are just being aware of, remembering without ever forgetting one's breathing. So this is all, that is the mindfulness of breathing. In the same way, all the mindfulness meditation means actually not losing the object out of from your mind and maintaining it. So that is very important. That kind of remembrance of the awareness of the object is what we need to develop, because that is extremely weak unless, as I said the other day, it is assisted by the force of attachment or something. Then it's different. One may not forget it easily. But otherwise, it is just like the goat eating from the tips of all the plants and destroying all the plants at the same time. So therefore, what is required in all these meditation is increased power of mindfulness. And that is something that one can improve through generally applying mindfulness. Of course not of mindfulness of doing something really negative, harmful things. That is absolutely better not to be mindful. If one happens to do something like that as absent-mindedly done is better. Generally, otherwise, in other activities, not only in one's so-called meditation, but also in our learning and other activities, positive activities, or even neutral activities which have to be done, then if one try to do them, generally also, mindfully, not doing here something mind totally elsewhere, the body doing something but mind completely elsewhere, or that is not mindful. One has to do whatever what one is pursuing, with wholeheartedly, with all mind. That way, with full dedication of your mind in that, then whatever one is pursuing will be well done. And at the same time, the power of mindfulness will increase. That way a person becomes more and more mindful. So that is something that can be increased also in our everyday life, in the way of living or doing things. So therefore Buddha in the sutras has taught such things like awareness, breathing, which is also a way to increase our power of mindfulness, but also many other things. Buddha actually has taught that we should eat mindfully, sleep mindfully, lie down mindfully, walk mindfully. There's a whole so-called walking meditation which is similar to that breathing awareness. One simply walks very, very calmly, but this is not possible in the midst of a whole lot of people. Then why somebody start walking like that, then everything will be disturbed. So, but generally, quietly, in forests, etc. In ancient times, in monasteries, there is one particular place which is called the walking place. And this can be also combined, because we have in Buddhism such as the circumambulation of the stupas of the temple. which at the same time can be combined also with the walking meditation also. Or, as in the Vinaya it talks about, also circumambulation of the stupa is all there. It can be easily combined, or there is special place for walking. The walking, the monastics then sometimes also take walks back and forth, very gently, mindfully, and at these moments one being fully mindful of one's stepping, each stepping, doing very precisely. One is aware of how the sole of feet, how that is touching the front part, the back part, etc., touching the ground, and then again lifting it from the ground, and then touching like that. One, without forgetting, one's mind is fully involved with this gentle walking. And while this time of walking, we keep our mind fully involved with it. That way walking is also one of the methods of developing, increasing the mindfulness. Even, or not only breathing, but one can also draw one's attention on certain movements of the body, such as the movements of the belly. When we are breathing the belly, breathe in, breathe out, then the movements of the belly, it goes. When air takes in, it kind of comes up. When you breathe out, it goes. That way, the belly is also moving. Then, drawing all one's attention on the movement of the belly while breathing. It is similar to the awareness of the breathing itself. So, there are many methods like these which are taught in the sutras as a means of developing mindfulness. But so therefore, there are special exercises like that, or in general, one should try to develop our mind through our doing whatever, always mindfully. Then it makes our mind generally more calm and quiet and concentrated. And then of course, that when one does meditation of any kind, easier. As long as our mind remains in this very nervous state all time, for changing this kind of habit, it's quite difficult to do any real meditation, because mind doesn't have that habit, and it's that it is so nervous. It always has to think of at the same time so many hundreds of things, and that is so deeply habituated. So in the midst of that, to practice meditation of any kind is hard work. Not only making effort during the time of the session, but on the whole, our whole daily life, the calmer it becomes, the more mindful it becomes, it contributes also for progress in meditation. Here's about some country also training their army to develop mindfulness and concentration, so then they can fight better. They can really shoot better. That is, what I mean. For the negativities, is something unwholesome, negative, then the lesser the mindfulness, the lesser the concentration is much better. Otherwise it becomes automatically more effective, more destructive, more dangerous. So that is something else. But for our useful and beneficial activities, even on the ordinary level, and then of course for the wholesome activities of the Dharma, then the mindful is very, very important. Only through developing mindful, we can accomplish, or one can accomplish what we are pursuing, all our studies at school or wherever, and any other activities. And especially for the ultimate purpose, for the ultimate activity, that is for training our mind to developing the wisdom and developing compassion, all that. Even compassion also, some kind of a spontaneous emotional compassion can arise due to presence of and particular conditions. Seeing a miserable, suffering being and so on can generate, awake in us our compassionate potentiality. That is depend on such conditions. But to generate compassion in a permanent way, and also unconditional compassion towards all beings, then that comes as a result of also meditation with and mindfulness. With mindfulness of not only the temporary, the surface situation of sentient beings, but the deeper suffering situation of the sentient beings. And with that kind of awareness, that kind of knowledge and that kind of awareness of the real sufferings of all beings, then one can generate a deeper compassion, which is not a temporary emotion, but something deeper, some deeper concern may generate. And all that requires mindfulness. It's not only for single-pointed concentration or for emptiness or something, but for all the virtues that we need to grow in ourselves, and especially in our mind, as a result of mindfulness. So that doesn't mean, again, should not misunderstand, or emotional compassion that we may generate towards somebody. Suffering being is maybe it's nothing important, maybe it's something negligible. Not at all. The fact that our mind is not so hard, so that it can be moved by situations of the sufferings of others, is already very, very wholesome. And thereby, even for a short moment, generating a compassion or this aspiration of separating such beings from their difficulty is already the most wholesome, like the state of pure seed of the Buddha. So that is nothing to neglect. But what I am here now saying is, in the context of the mindfulness, is that is not the one whose heart can never be moved, whatever the situation is. That means one is totally lacking any kind of potentiality of compassion, loving kindness. That is very miserable situation. So therefore, the fact that our mind can be shaken, can be moved by the suffering, even those superficial sufferings of the beings, is something very precious. So that is something anyway positive. However, what I'm talking here is, in order to generate the deeper compassion, such as the Mahakaruna, etc., as the Bodhisattvas develop, then it's not only that way. It generates through deep understanding of the deeper meaning of the sufferings, under which all beings in the cyclic existence are equally oppressed, not only some miserable persons, beings, but all sentient beings, those who are looking miserable or those who are looking very happy, whosoever in this cyclic existence are fundamentally existing always in deep sufferings, and also due to having all the cause of sufferings within them. So therefore, through realizing those situations, then one generates a much deeper and more permanent and more profound and stable compassion towards the situation of the sentient beings. And then that kind of Mahakaruna may generate in us. So that such kind of things can only happen if one has developed the power of the mindfulness, or understanding, and also the mindfulness, that awareness of the situation. So in this way, meditation actually means practice of the mindfulness. One has to be mindful of the necessary, the important objects, the situation, and only that way can develop our mind. So therefore, in the sutras, Buddha also often spoke about always developing the mindfulness, like the four mindfulness, that one has to develop the mindfulness of the body, mindfulness of the feeling, mindfulness of mind or the mental state, and mindfulness of the phenomena. That means the important aspects of the phenomena, such as interdependent origination. So these are important subjects about ourselves, about the phenomena. So therefore, to be mindful, first one has to know. Before knowing anything, there's nothing to be mindful. So one has to know them correctly, and then instead of forgetting those meanings, try to maintain, be aware of those meanings, those nature of such subjects, are actually the real meditation. Those are actually so-called mindfulness or satipatthana, or placement of remembrance, applying the awareness or remembrance. That is, satipatthana means there. Sati is remembrance, patthana means placing. So therefore, placing one's awareness of certain things, not just anything, but with certain important things like the body, mind, feeling mind, and interdependent relation, etc. In the same way, those are 4 mindfulnesses that are often mentioned in the sutras, but also one speaks about 5 mindfulnesses in the sutras, which also Buddha teaches, very important. That is the remembrance. These are called remembrance. Remembrance of the Buddha, remembrance of the Dharma, remembrance of the Sangha, remembrance of the giving, remembrance of the ethic. So these are 5 remembrances, which are very important. These are all, the real meditation are these. That means again mindfulness, not forgetting out of one's mind the 3 rules, through correctly understanding what Buddha is. And this in understanding is for the sake of remembering and holding in the mind. Not only just understanding the definition of that, what is a Buddha, and then we have understood it like to understanding from a dictionary. That's not the point. The point is through knowing it correctly and then keeping it in the mind without forgetting. That way one has to understand the Buddha, the Dharma, Sangha, so 3 objects to remember. And then also the giving, the importance of practice of giving is always to remember. And then also importance is the practice of ethic, also very important, what one has to abandon, what one has to keep as ethic. That means guarding our body, speech and mind from unsuitable actions. Those things are very important, and these are also for meditation. That means these are all to hold in our mind and also apply into practice, and that way to act, and that way to live, and then one fulfills the real meditation about them. And so that's so important. So Buddha has taught these 5 kinds of remembrance, which are equally important. These are actually essence of all. Usually we have lots of meditation techniques, of visualizations, of deity yogas and so on. Essence of those is those mindfulnesses which Buddha has taught in the sutras. In these 5 remembrances which I just mentioned, actually there is still one more, which is altogether is so-called 6 collections or 6 remembrances. These are also 6 remembrances. The 6th is called Deva remembrance. That Deva means actually the deities or the gods or Devas. So here the remembrance does not refer to any particular deity, but the deity is already the real deities for the Dharma, either Buddha or Bodhisattvas or Arhats, and these are anyway included in the remembrance of Buddha and Sangha. So what talk about here, do we need to remember some particular Devas? No, what is, how Buddha has taught is remembrance of the Deva states. That means the fortunate states which that one that aspires, that means the fortunate state, are result of the ethic and the generosity. First they were mindful of the ethic, mindful of generosity, and those are the causes. And then as a result, what comes out of that is fortunate existence. That if one seeks fortunate existence, which also one should not forget, because that is what one has to obtain first. If there is not a fortunate base, then all the rest of the development of the mind is out of question. So fortunate base existence.